Hello, Kelly here with Kelly's Rugged Life. And today in my video, I'm coming to you to give you kind of a wrap up of October. So every month this year, I have been working with four different things: an herb, a crystal, a deck, and a book. So at the beginning of the year, or right at the end of last year, I went through and looked at decks that I haven't used, crystals that I really wanted to study, herbs that I wanted to get to know more, and books that I had that I hadn't read yet. And I wanted to put them on a list and make sure that I got to them at some point during the year. And it was really great because they ended up, even though I kind of picked them ahead of time a year ago, at the time that they came up during the year, it really worked out well. And it was something that I enjoyed working with and that had a lot of spiritual significance. And so it's been really fun now that it's been almost a year that I made that list. And I'm getting ready to make a new one for 2026. And so looking at that and going through each one of those, and some months I had more time to study with them, and some months I didn't. One month, I had a book that I was going to read, this actually in September, that I was going to read for just September, but it was just too long and too involved. And I'll tell you about that book in just a minute. But some things have shifted a little bit, but for the most part, they've stayed on track. And I really enjoyed working with the different crystals and the different decks, and finding out about them. Some of the things that I've worked with go back and have been used for centuries as healing herbs or healing crystals, and some things have just recently been found. And so that was really interesting to find out about some of the differences in the crystals, and some of the herbs that have been around, and the way that they have been used, and some that have been used and used well, some that have been used and exploited. So it's been really interesting. And the books I've read, some of them have been really good. Some of them have been, not particularly my taste. And some of them probably I would have enjoyed a few years ago when I was much newer to this practice, but now they seem more beginner type books. And so I tried to make that shift and, recommend the book as a book that beginners would enjoy, so that it was a book that I enjoyed. But my theme for all of this was to go deeper, to look at the things that I have and go deeper, because I have crystals that I have all around, and a lot of them I just look at every day and I don't really know that much about them, and I wanted to find out more about them. Decks that have been sitting on a shelf that I haven't really used before, and I wanted to study them and do deck studies. Books, again, books I have on bookshelves that I wanted to read and find out all the goodness in. And herbs, that, because I've been doing a lot of herbs, making my own teas, making my own herbal tea blends, using them for the reason that we have them, using them for real reasons, like making elderberry tea when I feel bad, making thyme tea when my son has a really bad cough, things like that. So, looking at them and taking those little steps into making herbal medicine and making it real. So every month up until now, I've tried to make separate videos for each of the things, and October just didn't work out that way. So I'm now in November making this video that's going to be a kind of a wrap up of all four of the things that I've been working on. So for October, I worked with the herb of Sassafras, the crystal of Rhodonite. The deck is the Hedgewitch Tarot. And the book that I've been reading, and I just finished it just about a week ago, and it was supposed to be just for September, but I realized I wasn't going to finish it. And so I brought it into October and just kind of shifted the rest of the books and put one of the books on my list for next year. So I'm already starting a list for next year to do this. So the herb I've been working with is sassafras, and I wanted to work with sassafras because I think it's just intriguing. The name sassafras is intriguing. just to say, but it's also one that is has a past, has a history. And I remember when I was very young, probably 5 or 6, and going out in the woods with my dad and my sister. And it was winter, and we were like clearing trees and, chopping up, trees that had fallen down. And we came across a sassafras tree, and my dad scraped a little of the bark off and let my sister and I smell it, because he knew what it was and knew how it was, had been used in different ways in his childhood. And so, just that smell, it was just this smell that it had just a very unique smell. And if you've ever had root beer, that kind of smell of sassafras. And so that's why I wanted to use it and really explore it and see, how it was used and how it's been used. And it has been used. Sassafras trees are native to North America. And so the people who have lived on the land where I am, grew up with sassafras trees. Like I grew up with one in my backyard. And so and so just knowing that and seeing that it has been used for Native American tribes as a healer, and just a wide range of things. They used it for lots of different ways of healing. They used the bark for not only to make teas, or they would use the bark and grind it up and to make a poultice for a wound, or they would use it in teas or use it in soups or stews, to make it thicker. And the bark it was very widely used for lots of different things. And so it was not just a healing spirit, but also, a practical tree that was used for in many different ways. And then when Europeans came over and discovered the tree, it was they used it for boats. And I think there was a story that a person used sassafras wood for a boat, and the boat, out of all the boats that all the different woods, it was the only one that made it to where it was supposed to go. And so it became kind of like a lucky tree and a lucky bark to use. And so now kind of metaphysically, we take that luck and protection of the sassafras and how it is very much a healer. And it's now you can use it for that. Make a sassafras tea, use some of the bark around your house. You can use, and as usual with any of these herbs, use it in any way that you want. Find a picture, and you can use the picture and put, a picture of it somewhere up in your house for protection. And when you want to travel, you can use some of the bark, or infuse a piece of wood with some sassafras energy and carry it with you. So there's lots of magical ways that you can use sassafras. And of course, you can drink root beer. You can find root beer that is traditionally made, or you can make your own. I like to make sassafras tea and put some carbonated water in it, and it's like a homemade root beer. And so that's really fun. And you can, put your intention in it as you're drinking it, or if you don't like the taste of it, you can just make the tea and then use the tea, to water your plants or as an offering to the spirits. So it's lots of different ways that you can use sassafras. And it was a really fun one because it had, special meaning to me. And so it was fun to use and fun to work with. And then the crystal that I studied this month is rhodonite. And you can see if I can get it to kind of focus in on this rhodonite. And this one is a very light piece of rhodonite. And this one has has a little bit more of the darker pieces in it. And I do, as always, have PDFs with all this information on it so that you can download it and use it for for yourself or your magical uses, but it has all of this information on it. But rhodonite, and if you see it, and this is just kind of a matte tumbled piece of rhodonite that I have, and you'll see it that it sometimes it'll be pink like this and just be very pink with some darker spots in it, and some you will see will be very dark with just pink spots in it. And so it just depends, where it was found and the type of crystal that it comes from, the find that it comes from. And so this one was interesting because it is a stone that was not that was found not that long ago, back in the 1700s, and it was first found in Russia, and so it was used a lot by the nobles there because it was it's just such a gorgeous stone, and became known as the eagle stone because they observed eagles taking a little piece of it and putting it in their nests when they have babies. And so this became a very much a stone of protection, one that can protect you. So it's really good if you're traveling or you want to extra protection, around your home or in your car, or as you're traveling, a bag that you might carry with you. Rhodonite's really good for that, and it is. It's very calming because it has that heart chakra pink color, and it's also got the darker colors in it, and so it can be grounding at the same time. So it was a really fun stone to work with, especially this time of year. When you're going into, or when where I am, it's going into the colder, darker months, and so I thought it was a really good stone to work with at this time for more protection and for more grounding. So that is the herb, and that is the crystal. And so the deck that I worked with, this is the Hedgewitch Tarot. And so this is by Tudor Beth and art by Angela Rizza. And it was a really fun deck. It's very much very witchy. It's very taking the everyday world and bringing and crossing that line between the everyday and the liminal. And that's what a hedge witch does. The hedge witch is the one that crosses that line, that sees the boundary between the natural world and the other world. And the cards are, like I said, they're very witchy, and this is what they have on the back. And they are, and it's interesting that the backs are not reversible. You can see there's the little bird that's sitting in the wreath. And so, I mean, you could and probably not notice it that much, but if you're really a real stickler for reversals, this might not be one that you would want to use for reversals. But it's and you can see this is the Four of Wands. And you can see it has the unicorn over here and a person over on the other side. And, they're going out and gathering some berries from this tree for a celebration, because the Four of Wands is usually a celebration. And the cardstock is very nice. It was very easy to shuffle. It's got that kind of linen finish to it. It's a regular size, and it is, let's see, and so here again you see very one of the Hedgewitch there with the birch trees in the background, and this is the Eight of Swords. And so it's just a very pretty witchy deck, and I'll just show you some more of the cards here. And so if you enjoy, and it's very seasonal as well. So all of the suits go through a season, and that I thought was really fun in this turning of this season. And this Wheel of Fortune, has the seasons on it, and it has the zodiac signs as well. And I thought this was just a really very pretty card. And some of the cards are very much Rider-Waite-Smith inspired, and then some, like this one is strength, and it's very different. You know, the strength is usually, you know, a woman with a lion, and this one is a woman in her apothecary shop in her home where she feels strong. And so, you know, some of them are very very Rider-Waite and inspired, and some of them go their own way. And I liked that, and it was interesting to see, you know, the different takes on the card that the author had and how they were illustrated. So I would definitely recommend this one if you like decks that are very nature based, that are very witchy, that are kind of this darker color, because you notice that the cards are, you know, more, most of them, you know, are very, have like a more darker color palette. And so if you like that, if you like a lot of animals, and if you like a lot of creatures in this one, it has unicorns, it has a phoenix, I believe, and has fawns and owls and all kinds of just magical creatures. So if that is something that appeals to you, this would definitely appeal to you. And it's very, you know, the oh yeah, here's the phoenix. It's very well illustrated, and it's very detailed without being overly detailed, and without being just, you know, so much on the card that you really can't focus in on anything. I thought all the cards had, you know, focus, like the moon here. It definitely, you know, has a focus. It's got a lot of interesting things in it, but it's definitely something that you can focus on. I don't know that I would recommend it necessarily as a beginner deck, because I think that there is enough of its own kind of working with the seasons and going on its own way in different cards. So if you're trying to learn, you know, learn the in a more traditional system like the Rider-Waite-Smith, I don't know that I would necessarily recommend it, but you know, it would be fun. It's really a fun deck to work with, and very it's very liminal, and I think that it's going to be a good one for this time of year, because I definitely would use it, you know, all through the fall and all through the winter. And then because some of the cards are more spring-like and summer-like, then it would definitely be one that you could use in the spring and the summer as well. So that is the Hedgewitch Tarot by Tara Beth and art by Angela Rizzo. The last thing is the book that I read. And again, I started this one in September, and I thought that I was going to be able to finish it in September, but it's not that it was that long, but it is very involved. It was written by J.A. Kent, and she is a doctor and a natural. She uses a lot of natural healing in her work. She does counseling work and uses a lot of shamanic techniques and ways of soul retrieval and building altars and using crystals and those kinds of modalities in her healing. And this is her story about how she came about, and then about how she connected with other people who do the same kind of thing and the same kind of healing. And she has a couple of chapters on vets who are, you know, veterinary doctors, but then realized that some of the pets that they were treating just were not responding, and so they started using more shamanic techniques even on their pets, and you know, realized that how pervasive this healing is and how effective it can be in a lot of cases where people just have physical illnesses, but they're not responding to Western medicine. And so it was really interesting. And does a lot of history in it as well. And that's, I think, what took me a while to get through is she goes back and she talks about history, and she references a lot of other healers and other writers who have written both pro and con for this area. So one of the people that she references is Sandra Ingerman, who is a very big shamanic healer and talks about her healing, but she also then references medical doctors who have written on the same topic and not come to the agreement that shamanic healing and working with the goddess is something that is good or effective. And so she talks a lot about her coming into this type of healing and how she came from that more Western mindset, that mindset of, well, there must be some drug that will cure this, or there must be, some, therapy that will, traditional therapy that will cure this. And she tells the story of several of her patients that went through and got to a place where nothing was helping. And so they came to her and said, I don't know what else to do, and I really want to heal this. And she realized that some of the healing was coming from it was coming from past lives, and was coming from childhood trauma, was coming from soul loss. And so she worked with the goddess and did shamanic techniques to repair this. And subsequently, their anxiety, their panic attacks, their physical things that they were suffering from went away, and they were able to to lead more less pain-free and less anxiety-ridden lives. And so it was really interesting book, and it was very much a mix of research and other people's opinions and other people's thoughts and her own journey. And so it was a really good book, and it's definitely more on the way of scholarly book. So if you like to read that kind of book that has stories and things mixed in, this is a good one to read. And as as an English major and a former English teacher, I very much appreciated the research that she did, and the quotes that she put in, and the ways that she weaved all of these things together. And she does talk a lot about, and I think this is her very favorite phrase, is ontological shock. And she says that is the coming from kind of the worldly view of logic and the more Western view, and then having this other world come in and say, well, wait a minute, this is not the only way to see things. And her experience, and she calls the other world, to her she calls it the Alpha May. And so, and for that, for her to have that kind of those things kind of come in and say, this says one thing, this world says another thing, and how can these things work together? And that is a lot of her journey in the book too, is bringing those things together and seeing how they can work together, and seeing the pluses of this side and the pluses of this side, and how they can both work together in a good way. So I do recommend the book if you are interested in that kind of approach, in that kind of more scholarly approach, and then bringing in the more shamanistic approach. There's other books out there that do it kind of the opposite way, that come at this view and from a more shamanic angle, and then bring in the research. But this one is, I think, very much that way. And I did very much enjoy the book. And she has the first part of the book is more about her journey and the ways that she came into looking and using shamanic techniques and her healing. And then she has several sections on patients and their stories. And then she has sections on other healers that she met, healers that, like I said in the beginning, that did worked with both other humans and worked with pets and worked with animals, and have animals as familiars and as shamans. And so it was, and that was fun because I've always loved animals and worked with animals. And so it was really interesting, to read that. So that is it. Those were the things that I worked with: the herb, the sassafras, the crystal rhodonite. The deck is the Hedgewitch Tarot, and the book, The Goddess and the Shaman by J.A. Kent. And I will have links to all of these where you can buy these things in the description. And I'll also have up pretty soon the things I'm going to work with in November, so that if you want to go along in November and you want to work along with me, and hopefully I'll have separate videos again for each of the things as we go along in November. And as always, you'll have a link to the Cauldron where you can find all of this information. And so you'll find there is a PDF that you can download and use for sassafras. There's one for rhodonite. And there's also two different deck study guides. One is just a one-page guide that you can use that kind of records your information about a deck. And then there's another one that if you want to do a more in-depth deck study, then you can do that. And that one is a longer one as well. And then there is a sheet for a book review, so that you do write down and record if you want to have a record of books that you can record. So you can use that with these decks if you want to do your own study with this book and with this deck, or any of the books and decks. And you can find all the videos on my channel, and you can find all the past ones that I've done. You can find all the PDFs that I've done for this year in there as well. And I'll add more as we go along. So thank you for sticking with me through all of these things that I did in October. And if you have used any of these crystals or herbs or or the deck or read the book, then I would love to hear from you. And you can give me comment below and let me know what you think about all of these things. And I will see you again very soon. Bye.